All right, guys, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. My name is High Ruler, and today's video, we're going to be talking about the news that came out yesterday with regards to EA and the restructuring. But in terms of that news, there's more to discuss for fans of licensed games. And yesterday, I did touch on it, that it seems like with their kind of restructuring with Andrew Wilson's comments, licensed games are a thing of the past for EA. Now, in part of that news, what basically was reported afterwards is that the Respawn FPS game that was going to be a Mandalorian game was canceled. This game was kind of unveiled a couple of weeks ago through insiders that it was going to be a fast-paced, movement-based FPS, and it did seem like, based on the details we had, that it was going to be a lot of fun. Now, just as fast as we knew about it, it has now been axed and killed. And one of the more sad things about this is that I could actually see this happening to the last three licensed games that are happening with EA, those being Black Panther, Iron Man, as well as the third Jedi game. It does seem like no game is safe these days, not just licensed games, but just any game in general, with the kind of massive restructuring, I would call it, with the video game industry right now. Now, within this article from Tom Henderson, who you guys, if you don't know him, he's a big leaker in the video game industry. He does talk about Battlefront here, because yesterday's video, I did mention Battlefront in that, I guess the future of Battlefront is dead. Now, I've been away from the Battlefront scene for a while and the news of it, but it does seem like Battlefront has been dead for a while. In the article, Tom says, EA's been moving away from licensed IP for a while, first rejecting the idea of a Star Wars Battlefront 3 in favor of more Battlefield content, and more recently decided to move away from FIFA and form EA Sports FC. On Battlefront 3, which was pitched sometime in 2020 to 2021, one source said that the project wasn't greenlit by EA due to the licensing fees, and that's where it ended. Now, this, I guess, isn't old news in some respects. We know that when it comes to licensing fees, it can be pretty pricey. And of course, with the ballooning cost of AAA gaming nowadays, we do know that these budgets are just kind of going the way that you can't have them go, right? For example, reportedly through leaks and the rest of it, the unfortunate hack of Insomniac, that it seemed like Spider-Man was like $300 million. And I think that's just not the way these games have to go, right? You can't have your games costing as much as a movie, because then it can be unobtainable for a lot of development companies and publishers, right? So I can understand when it comes to these licensed games, which in some respects haven't really done well a lot of the time, that they just kind of opt for something they control 100% of, instead of kind of giving a lion's share to the licensor. And I think when you look at some licensed games recently, for example, we can look at Avatar and how Avatar is done. Avatar seems like a great game in the respect that if you enjoy Far Cry, you enjoy the Avatar IP, you will go into that game and have a lot of fun. Then you kind of look at the praise around Avatar, or what's been going on around Avatar, and you don't really see a lot of talk about it. And I think what happened there is that it just wasn't the IP, kind of banger that people thought it is. I think a lot of people like the movies. I just don't think that may have translated over well to being a video game. And I think there wasn't enough movement there for Ubisoft to kind of look at it and be like, wow, is this kind of worth it? On the other hand of that conversation, you have Star Wars Outlaws that is coming out, right? And Star Wars Outlaws could be a very fun game. It has the makings of a fun game. For Ubisoft and all the shit that they get, they do put out fun games 99% of the time, right? Obviously, you look at a situation like Skull and Bones, for example, which falls short, personally speaking. But a lot of the time, I look at a lot of Ubisoft games and I go, yeah, there's like promise there, right? The Division and the Division series being, one of my favorites, Rainbow Six, and some of the Ghost Recon games. But of course, it's never a guarantee, especially even if you attach a IP like Star Wars or Marvel or, in this case, Avatar behind it. On the other side of the conversation, though, you do have games like RoboCop. You do have games like the Terminator one, right? Developed smaller titles with smaller publishers and smaller developers, which can bring you fanfare just for being like a cult classic, for example, right? And I think what has to happen is that not just the licensors, but the publishers and developers have to go for smaller games, right? Of course, everyone wants an open world game where you can spend 40, 50, 60, 70 hours, because then they can charge that $80 price tag or whatever it is in American dollars. For us in Canada, it's 100 to 120. But I think a lot of the time now you have to go with smaller titles that really develop a vision and go after that vision, instead of kind of ballooning into these open world monstrosities a lot of the time, which can definitely balloon your costs, right? And I'd like to see that happen in the future. I talked about that yesterday, that there is still a way forward for licensed games, and there still is a way forward to kind of make the best of these things. I'm a fan of licensed games, so of course I want more Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek. I want more of these titles. I want more things happening with these games. But I think if that happens, then they will will be with smaller publishers, smaller developers. And I think in part of that, those license fees also have to go down to allow more freedom with these games as well. I think what we're seeing now, unfortunately, is a restructuring of the entire industry and an adjustment being made. And I think it's really unfair for a lot of the people who are just kind of working their jobs. And I think one of these side effects of that is going to be licensed games moving forward. I think we're past the days of a 300 million Spider-Man 2 game. And I think nowadays you should be expecting a bit smaller in terms of what you're getting. Even with PlayStation and their restructuring and laying people off and the way they're going, I think the days of these super big AAA massive games are just behind us. I think if you're looking for those, it seems like the Eastern publishers, Square Enix, for example, just brought out their Final Fantasy VII Rebirth today. I think those are still on the cards, but it seems like Western publishers and developers are just kind of moving away. And to that point too, Square Enix also owns Final Fantasy, right? So there's more maneuverability there on their part. So it's just an interesting time when it comes to the video game industry. I keep saying that I'm just going to read books because it seems like every day there's just more bad news in this industry, and it's just very hard to be a fan of. And I think for licensed games, I think one of the things that we're going to have to look forward to, and I say look forward to in the most positive way that I can spin it, is that licensed games will continue to go on. I don't think it'll ever go back to the days of being movie tie-ins, for example, but I think the days of these big ballooning open world 300 million development budget games are done. And I think we're just going to have to look forward to smaller titles with a smaller focus and things that we can really enjoy that have a kind of an idea and they build upon that idea instead of getting the scope creep that we are kind of accustomed to when it comes to a lot of these games. So with that being said, guys, that's all I have today. Obviously, it's sad for the Mandalorian game that was canceled. It's sad to see kind of that there are some days left for licensed games. But obviously, if you like what we just got with Spider-Man, for example, or even Suicide Squad, where these big, massive games attempt to do so much, I think a lot of the time we're going to see that these days are kind of done, and we're going to move forward to smaller titles, smaller projects with, I guess, a more refined scope and a more refined kind of purpose. And I think that is something to look forward to. But with that being said, guys, that is the end of the video today. If you want more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a nice little comment, and I'll see you guys next time. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, evening, night. Take care of yourselves. Later, guys.